guys, welcome again. This is Neena Perez, and this is Straight Talk, no sugar added. I am so glad you're here. You know, this show is created to discuss real life topics to grow, challenge, and transform your thinking. And today I found Nate Turner. He is an entrepreneur, a renowned speaker, an author, a philanthropist, and a leading parental empowerment activist. Now, he wants to make the world a better place where race, ethnicity, socioeconomics, that status no longer dictates the writing of anyone's destiny. And so you know this is going to be a really good and impactful conversation. So Nate, thank you so much for being on Straight Talk. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. You have raised the bar really high.
Awesome. I love doing that.
No
So Nate,
limboing for me. How low can you
no,
get?
no games, straight talk. So Nate, the way I like to always start this show is I always give like a little intros, but I like to know more about you. So if we can
Sure.
just know a little bit more about who Nate is, that would be awesome. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Cool. So I am just a kid from a kid. I'm a guy who grew up in Gary, Indiana, the son of Tommy and Gladys, the grandson of Ari and Robert and Adriana. And so, yeah, that's where I'm from. I'm from Gary. I'm a guy who was told the best I could hope to do with my life was join the military, that I was not college material. My guidance counselor, Mr. Tunk, who I love to tell his name because I like to remind people that you cannot believe what other people believe about you. And so I met 5 wonderful people who told me I could do more, and they encouraged me to go off to college, and I did. And I went to law school and graduate school, and now I'm a father and a husband, and I do a few other things, but that's a little bit of my story.
Wow. Okay. So talk about changing it around, right?
Yep.
From not being told that you can go to college to going to law school. And that's not a little thing, Nate. So
Yeah.
tell me about that though, because the guidance counselor said that, but was there a reason for that? Like, was there something that happened in your life or something that she was, seeing
He.
that made
Yeah.
her say, oh, he, sorry,
Oh, it's
that
he.
made him
Yeah. No.
say,
No. No.
made him say something like that to you? Because that is really detrimental to a young mind. That could be very detrimental to a young mind. So tell me a little
Yeah.
bit about that.
I think the for him, it was easy to take a look at someone's grade and
Mm,
have no idea about what's going on in someone's home.
mhm,
So I was barely a C student, and my guidance counselor and my father told me something about around the same time. Similarly, my father told me that, hey, in 2 years you have to make 3 choices, and I was like, well, what are those? And he said, one, you can join the military, and you know how I feel about that. B or 2, you can move out my house and get a job. And three, you can go to college. And I'm like,
mm,
well, only one of those options allows me to come back home and see my mother on a regular basis. I don't really
right.
care about you, but I would like to see my mom. That was going to college. And similarly, my guidance counselor said, hey, the best you could hope to do is join the military. Now, I grew up in Gary, which
Mm,
is a steel town. So in his mind, the best 2 options I had was to go work in a steel mill or enlist in the army or some one of the armed services. And so I met some people along the way, some of my classmates who were college material, and I just watched what they were doing. And so I started taking some of the classes that they were taking. And then if I
mhm,
could say, one of the things that happened to me when I was a 4th grader, my parents moved. And so I was in the same school system, but in a different area. And when I moved to a mostly integrated community, I was tracked. And so I was
mm.
put into marginal classes. And so then no one had any expectations of me. And I would surmise that I stop having expectations for myself as well. So it
Wow.
wasn't
Yeah.
until my junior year when I kind of woke up and took a look around and said, I'm better than what they're telling me I am. And I decided to really work hard to make that happen.
Do you think that was something already in you, Nate? Because that's a really that's a really hard thing to do, and when you're young, it's even harder, right? So, do you
Mm-hmm.
think it was already like a determination that's in you to want to like look around or be better than people tell you? What do you think about that?
So I think so. This is going to sound maybe a little hokey to some people, but I believe you'll understand it. My name is Nathaniel Turner. I am named intentionally after Nat Turner, My initials are NAT. My father wanted to raise a revolutionary. My mother, being a woman of faith, named me Nathaniel, which is Hebrew for gift of God. So I don't think
Mhm.
that there's any accidents about who I was supposed to be. It just took me to get to a place in my life to realize, you know what my parents have been trying to instill in me all my life, it's now time to do my part and make that a reality. I mean, I was
Mhm.
raised by a guy who was probably inches away from joining the Nation of Islam. I was born in 1965, so he was a big fan of Malcolm, and my father had us
Mhm.
doing some very unusual things in our household. My first bike I ever owned, I bought myself. He gave me a lawnmower, a rake, and a shovel, and told me at 10, if a man wants to eat, a man has to work. So there were things
Mhm.
certainly that were put in me that came out at that time, I'm sure, and have been coming out ever since.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, sometimes they instill things in us that we don't like at the time, but then realize how it serves us well, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, that was one of the best lessons. And now I'm in my 25th year of running my own business. And I tell people all the
Mm.
time, like, I'm not really surprised because my father told me to do that when I was 9.
Right.
So yeah.
Right. Or move out his house or something,
Or,
right?
or move out, right. Exactly.
So what when you went to school, like, to college, I mean, how was
Mhm.
that for you? Because you went all the way through to law school. So what got you interested in that part of it?
So I do this thing called backward design, and what I didn't realize at the time, that I was doing that in my own life. So I met a gentleman. His name is he's deceased now. His name was Judge James Kimbrough, and he was perhaps one of the most respected people in my community. And he was only about 5 or 6. And so while everyone else was thinking about how to escape, right, by playing basketball or football or doing something, I got a chance to spend time with Judge Kimbrough. His son was a
Mm.
very good friend of mine, James Jr., and I would go over his home and just being his presence. And sometimes I'd ask him, where did you go to college? And he told me he went to Fisk. And hey, so where did you go to law school? And he told me John Marshall. And then I thought, okay, I only got to get admitted to one school. If I can get to Fisk, I got a chance to be like Judge Kimbrough. And if I can get
Oh.
out of law school, get out of undergrad, I just need to get to one law school, and that's John Marshall. So that
Mhm.
was sort of the GPS direction that I'd set, that I was going to at least do that.
Right. That's awesome. What's amazing, right, is how important mentors are in our life, right?
Yes,
It's
yes.
really important. And I think we don't realize how much the youth looks at what we do. They
Hmm.
might not say anything, they might not even ask you anything, but they are looking, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Today it's
Yeah.
funny because there are people who I grew up calling pops, and now they're young men and women who call me pops.
I know.
Okay.
Nate, how did that happen, Nate? How
Yeah, I
did
don't
that
know.
happen?
I don't
Right?
know. Just
I
my grandmother
know.
said, keep living, right? Just keep living.
That's so good. So tell me a bit about what you do because you do a lot of things. So I know you have some TEDx talks out there. I
Mhm,
did
mhm.
see one of them, which was really, really good. You were talking
Thank you.
to the Z generation, I believe it was. Very
Yes.
well done. Very well
Thank you.
done. And I know you also write some books and you're a philanthropist and all this great stuff. So I'd like to know a little bit more about that, right? So the philanthropy work, how do you give back? What does that look like for you?
So the interesting thing is, I have this thing that we've used with my son. It's called the starting five, and we started to teach other people that. And what that the genesis of that is that there were 5 people who helped me become me, whoever I am, whatever you think of me. There are 5 people that were critical to me graduating from high school and at the very least going off to college.
Mm,
Judge Kimbrough, as I mentioned, Charlene Turner, um, Grant Turner, Frank McKinney, and wow, it just so Mrs. Kimbrough as well. And I can't even think of her first name, but they're all deceased except one person. And
okay.
those people told me that I could do more, and I can't repay them.
Hmm.
They're all
Hmm.
gone, and the one that's here wouldn't allow me to repay her anyway. So the only thing that I can do is to give what they gave me to other people. And
That's
I've given it
awesome.
to my son, but there's really not a lot of honor in giving your child something and not
Right.
being willing to give it to other people, because I wasn't their child. I was someone else's child, and they loved me for no reason whatsoever, but they just decided to love me.
Yeah. You know what's fascinating about that too is that the guidance counselor that told you that you're better off going to the military is also part of that journey, isn't he? Because,
He is.
yeah, he's
He
part of that
he
story.
he
Mhm.
is. Here's the irony
Mhm.
of that. That
Yeah.
that guidance counselor raised sons who went to school to become engineers.
Mhm.
Not only did I go to school and get a bachelor's degree and a master's and a law degree, but I have a son who's a fourth year PhD in electrical and computer
Wow.
engineering. So I would love to go back and see him and stick my tongue
Yeah.
out.
Right? Right? I mean, the best revenge is your success, right? Like, that is the
Absolutely.
best revenge, right? And
Absolutely.
also living your life as fully as you can with as much joy as you can. And so I love that. I love that you poured into your son and pour into others. And it shows, right? Because look at the path your son decided to take, right?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
an amazing story. That's really, it's really quite remarkable because you could have went any direction, Nate. I mean, you know this, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
you could have
Absolutely.
definitely taken that word that that person gave you and ran with it, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
everybody would have been like, yeah, I mean, it's fine.
Of
He's
course.
working in the
Yeah.
steel mill. He's good, you know?
Or worse, right? Or
Or
worse.
worse.
There were other
Yeah,
places.
right.
Yeah, there were other
Yeah.
places. And the
Yeah.
person's name is Faye. Her name is Faye Kimbrough. So
No,
I'd be
we remember.
remiss. Yes. Yeah. Yep.
Faye, we got your name, Faye. We got you.
Exactly.
Now, tell me about the work that you're doing because I read in the beginning that you are
Hmm.
doing things to make this world a better place. And a lot of topics that you're touching on are topics that are really hot and people really need
Hmm.
to speak about them, right?
Yeah.
So
Right.
race, ethnicity, socioeconomic status, all that kind of stuff. So how do what is your message on that? And how do
So
how do you show people that message?
so a couple things. So we do this.
Mhm.
We have a foundation called the League of Extraordinary Parents, and our objective with the League of Extraordinary Parents is to prepare parents to be zealous advocates for their own children. It is our
Mhm.
belief that
Mhm.
most parents have decided to outsource their children's life to other people, and that's a dangerous place to be. When I was a kid,
Yes.
right, and I sound like the old guy when I was a kid, but when I was a kid, the communities were very different than the communities are today. When I was a kid, as I mentioned, Judge Kimbrough lived close to me, so I could actually go over this black judge home and spend time with him.
Mhm.
Today, when we succeed, we move away. So
Yeah.
we leave the community deficient of role models who can be present every day. And so
Mhm.
we're trying to do is get parents to understand, hey, you can be your own child's real role model, and then let's show you the tools, the techniques and strategies to give your child the best possible life, regardless of zip code, regardless of what a counselor says, regardless
Mhm.
how inefficient the school system is, regardless if you have to take classes, your child has to learn on Zoom. Here, let's show you some tools and some strategies that if you implement these things while your child is being conceived in the first 3 to 5 years or so of your child's life, your
Wow.
children have a greater likelihood of being more successful than you could have ever imagined than they would have been if you did none of these things.
And they will be successful as parents, right? Because you're
Absolutely.
empowering them and giving them
Absolutely.
tools. And a lot of times, Nate, we don't. Well, a lot of times, most times, we don't know how to be good parents. We're trying as we go, right?
Right.
Right. So
Right.
if there's tools out there that are going to help you to be the best version of that, whatever that is,
Hmm.
that's a really powerful tool to give, and it shows that it works. And you're right. Not only are the role models not there anymore, honestly, Nate, nobody even goes over to anybody's house anymore,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I mean, trying to find a role model now is super tough. And the ones that you find are the ones on Instagram that show you that snapshot,
Right. Right.
that
Yes.
one
Yeah.
snapshot that now you think they are the thing, right, but
Yeah.
behind the scenes, maybe not so much. So,
Yeah.
that's a really tough thing to do because you're against right now also a lot of social media, a lot of fake, stuff
Hmm.
that we can see. I think when
Hmm.
me and you were growing up, we didn't
Hmm.
have too much of that. You kind of were in the neighborhood, you were outside, you were in people's homes.
Absolutely.
Now we're just seeing it through a screen, right?
Yeah, yeah. I'd say most of our humanity today is what I call fragmented, where
Mm,
people only see one small sliver. So if you
mhm,
imagine our humanity being 360 degrees, we don't ever show people 360 degrees. We show them
mm-mm.
1 degree of our humanity, and that's it. Well, the downside to that is that if you're watching and that's all you ever see, that's what you think people are 360 degrees,
Yeah.
but they're not. That's not who they really are. So yeah.
Right.
So the objective is, to me, is like, well, why am I waiting for someone else to be the model for my child? Why don't I just
Mm.
be my own child's model and just improve myself? So yeah.
Right. Right. And how was that for you? I mean, are you and your child like close? Are you close?
Yeah, my son is my best friend. He's been my best friend since I
Yeah.
saw him come into this planet. And one of the things, I'm imagining you speak Spanish, right? Would
Yes.
that
Mhm.
be a correct assumption? So
Yeah.
my son speaks 4 languages fluently and 2 other languages conversationally, right? So I'm a black
Go
man
ahead.
who only speaks English and doesn't do
Right.
that really well.
Right.
But but the objective was to make sure that the part of what we were doing was to raise someone who could speak, not only speak other people's languages, but understood other people's cultures, so that he could
That's
actually be
good.
a person whose humanity extended beyond his own little small neighborhood.
That is so fantastic. That is so fantastic. And so, your son, as you said, he's in college and he's moving forward and he's growing. What is he thinking about all the stuff you're doing, right? Because you had like I said, I saw that TEDx speech. It was
Mhm.
amazing. So you're also doing, and you have a few of them, I think, right? A few TEDx talks that you've done, right? Or was that
I've
just the
done
one?
one
Okay.
TEDx, one TED talk, but I've spoken a lot of places. I like
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, you might find several things with me, podcasts, speeches,
Mhm.
etc. But yeah, I
Yeah.
do a fair amount of that. I did more before the pandemic, but I do a fair amount of it still.
Yeah, yeah, this pandemic has changed the game a little bit. But I wanted to
Hmm.
also touch on, if we could, on your
Sure.
books because you have a
Okay.
few.
Yeah.
So I wanted to what's your first do you remember your first book? Because you have a
I,
few of them. What's your
I
first book?
do. So you mentioned my son, and honestly, everything that I've done over the last 26 years has been guided by the presence of my son. I
Oh,
am to say I'm nothing without him would be probably too much, but I am certainly better because of him.
that's
And he's the
awesome.
one that told me to do more. So there would be no books, there would be
Mm,
no not for profit, there would be no conversation with you and I today. A 16-year-old who was preparing to leave the country to go to Brazil to chase his dream of playing professional soccer told me to do more. And
wow.
this is part of it. So the very first book I wrote was called Raising Superman, and it's a
Oh,
collection of letters that I wrote to my son from age 2 to 16. And I put those letters
wow.
in a binder and gave them to him while we were in Brazil. He was getting ready to start the academy. I left and went to Rio for a few days on my own. I believed every person should go to Rio by themselves, but I don't speak Portuguese, so that was kind of an issue. Um, my wife called and said, not only should you need to come back home, she said you need to go back to the academy. I don't think he's going to do well. And when I
Mm,
arrived at the academy, I was expecting him to have his bags packed and ready to come home. And he said, "Hey, I'm good. I just got one question for you. Did you put the letters in any particular order?" And I said, "No." He said, "I reread the first three. I remember my purpose. I'm going to be fine. And whenever I come home, we're going to
wow.
publish these letters and share them with other people." Dad, because when you tell me I can do something, not only do I know I can do it, I know it's supposed to happen. And so,
Wow, Nate.
yeah.
Come on. Isn't
So
that like the best feeling in the
that was it.
world?
It was crazy because I'd written these letters privately to him, and I did not expect that he was going to want to share those letters with other people. But that
That's
that was
awesome.
his doing. And when he did come home, he found a publisher, he found a publicist, he found an editor. He did all of the work so that we could
Wow.
get that first book off the ground. Yeah,
You raised a go-getter for sure. My
yeah,
goodness.
yeah, yeah.
What's your last book?
The last thing we just finished was is called Journey Forward, and it's a book about
Mm,
journaling. And
okay.
I'm a guy who suffers from depression and had to find a way to get out of my head and find a way to be more intentional. So I started to just imagine my best life, and then I would
Mm,
just
mm,
kind of write notes about it. And now it's become a thing where the first thing I do every day is I write about this life that I consider my best life, and a life that
right.
generally is a life that I talk about serving, helping serving, and making sure other people know their life matters.
So you're touching people in a lot of different ways then. You're touching people with your books because
Hmm.
of the stories, and you have a few books. The last one being
Hmm.
about journaling. So you're really trying to show people that you can bring good into your life. You can write things down. You can overcome a lot of things and obstacles in your mind, right?
Yeah.
You're
Right.
also doing the parenting, so you're helping parents and you're helping them raise better, more thought provoked children, right?
Yep. Yep.
Um,
Yep.
do you feel like, and then this is going to be like like a I don't know, come to the left side question,
Let's
but
talk.
do you feel like do you ever feel like lack of either having a steady mother or a steady father cause that disruption in a child's life where having some of these empowerment tools that you're giving are more difficult for a parent to give? So a household without a father, a household
Mm-hmm.
without a mother, you know what I mean? Is it
Hmm.
more difficult to do this empowerment teaching that
So
you're?
yeah, I'm not going to deny that in my son's case, right? He has benefited both from having his mother and father present. There's no
Mhm.
question about that.
No
But I
question.
also tell
I
people
agree.
that I grew up in a home where you've heard of adverse childhood experiences. The CDC says there are 10 of those. I grew up in a house where the survivor, I guess you'd say, of 8 of them. My wife grew up in a house where she's the survivor of 7 of them. Collectively, we have 9 of the 10 aces. So yeah, I had 2 parents in my home, but many times I wish I only had one, and
Right.
many times it was as if I only had one. So
Right.
I think what we have to do is recognize what we have and do
Mhm.
the best
Good.
we can with what we have, and then
Mhm.
put things in place and people in place who are willing to help. There are want to help. It's just about how we go about getting additional people in our life to make the village. If it is true, right, that it takes
Yeah.
a village to raise a child, well,
Yeah.
then the goal is to create a proper village and not a village of idiots, which
Oh, that's
oftentimes
good.
we curate, right? So if we can get a
Yeah.
proper village in place, yeah, then a child has an opportunity, has a chance or a
That's
better
really
chance.
good. Yeah, that's wow, that's such a good answer because it does take I think it takes a village, Nate. I think it takes a
Yeah,
village, right?
yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
having
yeah.
good not just both parents there if you can have that, but also like maybe a good role model, good
Mhm.
teachers, good, friends,
Yeah,
co-parents, like parents from another family, like what happened with you, right? With
absolutely,
your friend's
absolutely,
father. That's
absolutely.
just so important. So I want to know what you're up to now, Nate. What are we up to? What are we doing? You're
what
doing a lot, right? So what else
what
are you
about
doing
to?
to impact the world? What is it that you're doing? What's
So
next?
my son and I are working on this ideal. It's not even close to being a reality. But in our children's book that we wrote, which is called The
Mhm.
Amazing World of STEM, we're working on the second edition of that with our artist. I got to say her name, Kiva, and so Kiva, Naeem, and I are working on the second edition. But the objective of the book, The Amazing World of STEM, is to show adults what the world could look like if we decided to be intentional about being good people. So
Oh,
these
good.
kids live in what's called a nano community. And so there's a lot of technology that's available to us
Hmm.
that we
Hmm.
believe that could eradicate many of the social issues that we have today. Like, for example, homelessness. There's a way
Hmm.
to 3D print homes today for less than $6,000. And the homes are almost going to be 2,000 square feet. But we
Wow.
live in a country that would prefer to have people live on the street and live in a box and sleep on the concrete and claim that folks have mental health issues. Well, I would have a mental health issue too if I had to sleep on the floor in a cot, right, or wherever.
Hmm.
But hey, imagine if we could build homes for $6,000, right?
Mm.
Most everybody in this country could own a home if all we were charging was $6,000. You and I probably could donate some homes to people for
Yeah.
$6,000. And so
Yeah.
that's the community they live in. We have it's community with arrow farms. So we're trying to eliminate this whole concern about living in food deserts. What if we just grew our own food? If we went to Disney before the pandemic, and Disney has a place called the Land. I want to say about 50% of Disney World's food is produced by Disney World, right? So the food that they serve their customers They
Mhm.
produce it themselves. So like, well, why
Mhm.
can't we produce our own food, right? And so that's what the story is about. Like, what do we do
That's amazing.
to move the planet forward?
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, and that needs to be spoken about more too, because I honestly did not know that, Nate, right? So, you know, if I mean, that's not just a book is what I'm trying to say, right?
Yeah.
That's like a whole thing. It's a whole thing.
Well, Nina, I'll say this. During the day, I work in the financial services industry. And
Mhm.
so when my clients would call me, if you were a client and you said, hey, Nate, where should I invest? We might talk about emerging markets. And one of the things
Mhm.
we talk about emerging markets is what are people doing in Africa and Asia, right? Places that typically don't have all of the modern conveniences we have in America. Well, one of the great things that happens sometimes in emerging markets is they don't have all of the conveniences. So they don't have the infrastructure that they don't want to get rid of. They're looking for new infrastructure.
Mhm.
So they would build 3D printed homes there, but we won't do it
Oh,
here. So I said, like, what how much sense does that make? That we'll do it in Africa, we'll do it in Asia, but we won't do it in the Bronx, and we won't do it in Harlem, and we won't do it
right,
in Gary, and we won't do it in Chicago, we won't do it in LA or Cleveland. Like, it makes no
right.
sense wherever. So we thought,
Makes no
what if we
sense.
brought the same technologies that we implement around the world in underserved communities and did it in our own underserved communities?
Right. Wow, that's powerful. That's gonna change the game, Nate. That's gonna change the
Yeah,
game. You know,
yeah.
it would, right? It would. No,
Mhm.
if we did that, it would. I grew up in the projects, right? So I was born and
Okay.
raised in the projects,
Okay.
and we didn't have any of that. We just didn't. You know what I mean? Like, honestly, we just didn't, right?
Right.
My
Right.
mom was just trying to survive. That's all. We just trying to survive, right? And
Right.
so I often think about, what would happen if they had bought every almost projects out here anyway in Connecticut have like a community center, right?
Mhm.
So what
Mhm.
would have happened if we weren't just sitting out there playing games and playing basketball and handball, right? But what if we were in a STEM class,
Yeah.
right? What
Yeah.
if somebody
Yeah.
talked to us about that? Things could be different, right?
Yeah.
So I get it. Mhm.
What if your parents were told before you were born that they should start reading to you in the womb? What if your
Right.
parents were told the moment that you were born they should sing, dance, and play with you? What if your parents told you to get big books and look at the big books and mention everything that's on the big book, and until your attention goes somewhere else as an infant, continue to do that? What if your parents said to you, um, someone told your parents, hey, make sure Nina hears other languages. Make sure when she comes in the room, not only does she hear English and Spanish, she hears German and French and
Mhm.
Portuguese. You know what would happen? You would eventually probably speak those languages because
Right.
those things would have been embedded in you very early on. But
Right.
we don't talk to families about those kind of things, and
No.
those are some of the things we're talking to families about today.
Right. Yeah. Oh, that's so good, Nate. That's so good. So before I let you go,
Sure.
I want to know how people get to know about what you're doing, your nonprofit, all of this stuff. So if you have like social media handles or your website or something, can you drop that now? Because I'd love to get that.
Yeah, I mean, the simplest place is I have a website. It's not very good, so I need to have it under construction. But it's Nathaniel A Turner dot
Mhm.
com. So NATHANIELA period, yeah, period.com.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
dot
That's
com,
awesome.
yes.
Yeah. Awesome.
And then you can find everything else from there. Okay, you can find about the League of Extraordinary Parents there, and I still have a blog called Raising Superman is there, and our videos and
Okay.
podcasts that we've done, those kind of things there as well.
Yeah. Is that also the location they can go to check out the books, or is that on Amazon, or is that through
Yeah,
your
yeah. The
website?
books are so if you go there, you'll find a link for the books,
Okay.
and it'll take you to Amazon or Barnes and Noble. So wherever books are sold, the books are sold.
Okay.
So they're available. I'm terrible at PR. I'm looking for somebody now to help me with that. I'm terrible.
I so
I'm
hear you.
terrible.
I
I'm
so
terrible.
hear you. And it's time consuming too, Nate. And that's like that's a smart thing to do anyway as an entrepreneur, right? Is to kind of outsource the things that you are not good at or can't
Yeah,
do or don't have
yeah.
time for,
I
so that
don't
you
want to
can
do
focus on the things
it.
that you're doing, because you're doing some
Yeah,
good stuff. And
yeah,
the stuff you're doing is not small. It's stuff that really you have to get the snowball going so that it can become huge, right? And
yeah.
so I that's why I wanted you on here. I love the work that you're doing. I love the talks that you've had. I love your energy and the kind of person you are. And I'm, super grateful that you took the time to be on here. So thank you for that. I appreciate
I
you.
appreciate it. I'm grateful to you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yep.
And guys, thank you so much for being with us. I am going to make sure that I put all of Nathaniel's information or Nate's information down below in the show notes so you can click and follow and support what he does and actually read through a lot of these great things because he's doing a lot of good things with parenting and just leading people in philanthropy and his talk. I saw it on YouTube. It was really excellent. So check all of that out. Please don't miss it. And as far as me, you already know me. This is Neena Perez. This is Straight Talk, No Sugar Added. Go ahead and contact me at hello@Straight Talk, No Sugar Added if you need anything. Until next time.
This broadcast is brought to you by Wincheck Studios. We are an all-in-one educational platform for podcasters that revolutionizes how hosts leverage content to increase engagement with listeners, downloads, and income. We come together to focus on community, collaboration, and collective impact. For more information on how you can interact directly with our hosts, access exclusive live content with offers you can't get anywhere else from our official partners, join our purpose-driven community by visiting www.winject.com. If you're ready to build a career doing what you love, then we're ready to see you there.